Hello everybody, hope all is well. So I want to discuss the weekly Torah portion of Parsha Devarim, the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy, Parsha Sefer Devarim. So the Parsha, the Torah portion, it starts as follows. So we know that the Jews were in the desert for 40 years. And right before the Jews were about to enter Israel, and right before Moses was going to die, so basically the 40th year, this is the context of what's happening. Moses basically goes to the entire Jewish people and starts rebuking them. The word rebuke means that basically constructive criticism. The idea that you see somebody's doing something wrong and you tell them, hey, you're doing this and this wrong. It's it's not good. You got to work on it. You got to do better, and just giving them criticism, constructive criticism. Obviously, not to put them down, but to bring them up. And so Moses is talking about, in the beginning of the Parsha, it's discussing all the different things the Jews did throughout the 40 years in the desert, all the complaints, the sin of the golden calf, the sin of the spies, the complaints about not going into Israel, and all the different, things that happened in the 40 years. And Moses is rebuking. And now, the question is as follows. So some of the sins, for example, let's say the sin of the golden calf or the sin of the spies, happened 38 years earlier. So let's say it happened in around year 2. And now Moses is rebuking them basically 40 years later. The question is, why did Moshe wait so long to rebuke the Jews? Let's say you see somebody doing wrong. We all have this where we see somebody's doing something wrong. And right away, when we see them doing something wrong, we want to correct them on the spot. Why? Because we know that if we wait a day later, a couple hours later, a week later, whatever the timing is, you're going to forget to tell the person, hey, you're doing this and this wrong, right? So we think in our minds, okay, let's tell the guy right away before I forget, let me correct this guy of what he's doing wrong. But Moshe waited 40 years. How did Moshe not forget? Or the bigger question, why did he wait 40 years? Why not tell them right away? And the answer is that Moses knew that if I corrected them right when that happened, right when the sin happened, it would have not worked. It was not the right timing. He had to wait for the perfect timing to do it. The Midrash, I think, goes over a similar incident that happened with, you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? Jacob, his name is Israel. We call him in Hebrew Yaakov. So Jacob, was one of his sons, Reuven, basically, did a very, very horrible crime, when he was younger. Did something really bad. And Yaakov, instead of, rebuking him right away, Yaakov waited on his deathbed. He was over 100 years old. On his deathbed, he started rebuking his son. And his son by now is an old man. He already has grandchildren, right? And he started rebuking him and telling him, you did this wrong, this wrong. And the Midrash asked, why did he wait so why did it take so much time? Why didn't he tell him right away? Why did he wait at the end of his life to rebuke his son Reuven? And the Midrash said, because Yaakov knew that if he rebuked Esav earlier, there might have been a chance that Reuven would have been hurt by the rebuke, and instead of listening to the rebuke and correcting himself, he would have joined with Yaakov's arch nemesis, which is his brother Esav, who literally is like the biggest anti-Semite, anti-God person. And he would have, instead of joining the God squad, which is Yaakov's kids, his son Reuven would have joined Esav's, the side of the anti-God squad in a sense. So we see from here that the rebuke is not like, oh, I just do whatever I feel like. It has to be, not only, some people think with rebuke, it's how you say it. You gotta first, before you, there's rules of rebuke, and I'm not gonna go into all the details of how to rebuke, but some, for example, before you rebuke somebody, you compliment them before, you say it in a very nice tone. Sometimes you use something called a straw man, where you don't directly say it to the person, but you say it using an example of another person, but you don't directly attack them in a sense. But there's so many ways to rebuke. But one thing we always forget when rebuking is not just how we do it, but when we do it. Sometimes it's not the right timing. And Moses knew that there wasn't the right timing. Yes, the second year, he waited 40 years later. Sometimes, the rebuke takes 40 years. Sometimes it takes many years until you can rebuke the person on what they did wrong. Sometimes it's not the right timing. Sometimes you have to wait a long time. Sometimes it takes a week. Sometimes it takes a few days. But the idea with rebuke is not just how you say it, but it's also when you say it. And that's why Moses waited at the end of his life, because he felt that was the most opportune time. He's about to die. He felt that all the Jewish people are going to listen to him. All the Jewish people, their leader, Moses is about to die. He felt that was the most opportune time to make the point, to get the point across of the sins the Jews made and rebuke them about them in order for them to correct their sins. Now I have a question on that. The idea goes that a lot of the people we know who, for example, who did the sin of the golden calf or who did the sin of spies, weren't there 40 years later. We know that, for example, let's say with the sin of the golden calf, that the people who actually committed the sin of the golden calf, right, who did it, they died, right? The Torah says they died. And so in the time of the golden calf, the only people who survived were the Leviim and the women and the people who didn't do this sin, right, of the golden calf. But a lot of people died. So the people who actually committed the sin of the golden calf weren't there. That's number one. Number two, the sin of the spies, for example, also, that a lot of people who committed the sin of the spies, we know that the Torah says that only the people, whoever complained and cried, those people basically died out in the desert throughout the next 40 years. So the only people who survived, basically, who lived at around the time of the sin of the spies and survived, were the people under the age of 20, right? The girls and boys under the age of 20. So everyone from the age of 20 and above weren't there to go into Israel, so they didn't survive at the 40th year, except for the women and for Joshua and Caleb, and basically everybody else died out. So Moses is basically rebuking people who actually didn't commit the sin that he's rebuking them for. Think of that. Why is Moshe rebuking everybody? Guys, you did the sin of the golden calf. These people that he's rebuking, it's 40 years later. These were young children at the time that sin happened. Why is he rebuking them? Why is he rebuking them about the sin of the spies and so many other things? So the answer is as follows. That basically the people, let's say for example the 20-year-olds, whoever was there at the time, or the women, or whatever it is. But let's take the sin of the golden calf, for example, the women, right? Although the women didn't take a part of the sin, and it was really the men who did it, right? And the Levim so also. But the idea is what? That all Jews, right? We say this in Judaism. There's something called mutual responsibility. We say in Hebrew, Kol Yisrael Arevin Zeh Lezeh. That every Jew is responsible for each other. No matter what, if another Jew is doing something else, doing something that's not right, it's not like, okay, that's his problem, and I do my thing, he does his thing. No, we're all in this together. So the Jews who are around the sin of the golden calf, the ones who survived, the sin of the golden calf or the sin of the spies, whatever, those people, although they didn't commit the sin themselves, but because they failed to stop it, they got held accountable for it, as if they did it themselves. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew that if he doesn't rebuke the Jewish people now for the collective, sins that they did, guess what? If you have the power to do something and you don't do it, it's as if you did it. Why? Because the idea of what? Kol Yisrael Arvin Lazeh. Every Jew is responsible for it. Every Jew is responsible for each other. There's the idea of mutual responsibility. The idea of I can't do it. It's not, okay, I'm going to be religious, I'm going to keep Torah mitzvah, and this guy doesn't want to keep it, let him do what he wants. I do what I want in my home, and this guy does what he wants in his home. It doesn't work like that. We're all responsible for each other. We're all in the same boat. If that guy is doing something wrong, it's my responsibility to help that guy to go on the right path. And if somebody's truly religious, we know that the mitzvah of rebuke is a mitzvah from the Torah to rebuke somebody. And again, obviously not to rebuke a person in a way that puts them down, to, where it's just straight criticism, not constructive, but in a sense that you're just trying to put the person down, you want to bash on the person. That's not rebuke. That's not good. That will never work. It has to come from the heart. It has to come from a place of caring. But the idea is what? That if a Jew, a religious Jew, someone who, keeps Shabbat, someone who keeps kosher, says, oh, what do I care if my brother or sister, what do I care if my cousin, what do I care if my friend, or whoever it is, another Jew, who cares if that guy doesn't keep kosher? Who cares if that guy doesn't keep Shabbat? I'm keeping Shabbat, I'm keeping kosher, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but he's not, so it's not my problem. If a Jew thinks like that, then he's truly not religious. Again, obviously religious is not all or nothing, but the idea is what? That's also a mitzvah. Just like you have to be religious to keep Shabbat, that's a mitzvah from the Torah, so too rebuking somebody is a mitzvah from the Torah. And someone who has that mentality that it's all about me, and it's a selfish mentality that I only care about myself and I don't care about others, he's forgetting the point. He's missing the idea, and he's lacking in that mitzvah of rebuke. He's lacking in the mitzvah of mutual responsibility, that we're all in this together. And a perfect, example to really explain this point of the significance of this idea can be found in the Gemara of Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, and Gemara of Shabbat, page 54b, basically the oral Torah, and it teaches this very important idea. It says, whoever has the potential to rebuke the people of his household about a sin being committed and doesn't rebuke them, this person is held responsible for their behavior and is punished as if he committed the sin himself. For example, you live in a house, and in your household, whether it's your wife, your kids, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, right? And obviously you got to say in the right way, in a polite way. So I'm not talking about how to rebuke. That's for another time. But I'm talking about the idea of just rebuking. If you live in that household and you have the ability to stop somebody, for example, let's say somebody in your house is not keeping Shabbat or not keeping kosher, and you have the ability to teach them, to explain to them, to talk to them, to convince them, but you don't do anything about it, it's as if you committed that sin yourself. So when you go after 120 years, so let's say, for example, someone in your house is not keeping Shabbat, okay? Or any other mitzvah, but let's say Shabbat, for example. And he doesn't keep Shabbat, that your brother, for example, doesn't keep Shabbat, and you don't go and try your best, in the right way, obviously, to bring him, to explain to him the importance of Shabbat, and to get him to keep Shabbat, and he doesn't keep Shabbat because you don't care about him, and you don't try to rebuke him and try to bring him on the right path with constructive criticism, it's as if you don't keep Shabbat yourself. Meaning in your account, you're going to say, wow, I kept Shabbat, I kept kosher, I kept all the laws, I studied halachas, I knew everything. Then after 120 years, they're going to go in your account and say, yes, you broke Shabbat for about 80 years. And you're going to be like, what? I never broke Shabbat one time. What are you talking about? I was religious all my life. And Hashem's going to say, guess what? Well, your brother wasn't, and you had the ability to help him and you didn't help him, you're held accountable and all his sins go to your account. Whether it's Shabbat, whether it's kosher, whether it's if he shaves with a razor, or this part of the face which you're not allowed to, or he cuts his sideburns short, or he wears wool and linen, or he speaks lashon hara, or he steals in business, or whatever the crime is, whatever the sin is, whatever of the 613 categories he violates, if you don't rebuke that person in your household, you get held accountable. Now the Gemara takes it a step further. It says that if he can rebuke the people of his city, you live in New York, you live in Jerusalem, you live in whatever city you live in, and you have the ability to rebuke and get people on the right path, but you don't, you are held accountable. That person is held responsible for their sins and is punished as if he committed the sin himself. So imagine the city, you live in an entire city, you're the rabbi of this shul, or whatever it is. You could apply this example. You're the rabbi of this shul, you're the rabbi of the city, whatever it is, and you have the ability to enhance kosher, to enhance kashrut, enhance observance of Shabbat. Shut down all the buses on Shabbat, so there's no buses. I'm saying in probably Israel. You can't really do that in America. Obviously, it's not a Jewish city, or you have the ability, to your congregation. You have a whatever it is to help your congregation to fulfill a certain mitzvah, to learn Torah, to whatever it is, and you don't do it, and you fail in that mitzvah, you get held accountable. All their sins, all their things they failed, all the positive commandments they failed to do goes to your account. Let's take it a step further. If a person has the ability to rebuke the entire world, but he doesn't, he is held responsible for their sins as if he committed the sins himself. Again, if you could help your household, if you could help your city, if you could help the world, and you don't do these things, God holds you accountable for their sins. He holds you accountable for the sins of the world even, if you have the ability and you don't stop it. How practical, how every single one of us, we live in a world where 99% of Jews are basically disconnected from Judaism. We see this all the time. And it's our responsibility to do something about it. Now, the Talmud, the Gemara goes on to say that when the first temple, the first Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the Tzaddikim, the righteous people, were also murdered cruelly by the Babylonians, along with the sinners. So the question is, why did the righteous people suffer if it was the wicked people who were the ones making the sins? Meaning, you have tzaddikim, righteous people, and reshaim, sinful people, right? People doing good and people doing bad. Now, if God is destroyed, He decides, I want to destroy the temple, and because of that, a lot of bad things are going to happen. People are going to die. Now, why should the righteous people get held accountable? Why, when the first or second Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, why were all the righteous people? Why did they die also? Why it should have been the people are sinning. Well, we said the first Bet HaMikdash was destroyed because of what? Of sexual immorality, murder, and idol worship. And we said the second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. So you know what? Make it because of the people who sinned in those areas. They should be the ones dying for the sins. Why are the righteous people who didn't commit those crimes? The righteous people didn't do avodah zarah, they didn't do idol worship, they didn't do sexual immorality, they didn't commit murder. So why are they not held accountable? Why are they held accountable? They didn't do anything. It should be the sinners who are punished. And the answer is what? So we say, shouldn't the wicked ones be the only ones who get punished? The answer is that since the righteous people failed to rebuke the sinners, they were held responsible for the sins they committed and had to share the punishment with them. What a powerful idea. What a crazy idea. That what? If you had the ability to stop somebody, you had the ability to help somebody, to bring them on the right path, but you stayed back and said, I'm righteous, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not my responsibility. You get held accountable. It's as if you did the sin. It's as if you did the sin yourself. Now, there's a very important idea I want to touch upon that's in this area. The idea is as follows: that let's tie this idea to Jewish outreach, to kiruv, right? Because this is basically this they overlap these topics. The idea of what? You see your brother or sister is straying off the path of getting close to God. He's violating the mitzvot, the 613 commandments, whatever that commandment may be. Or he's off the right, he doesn't know where he's going. And you have the ability to help him, and you don't help him, you get held accountable for that. Now apply this to a kiruv, a Jewish outreach situation. There's scenarios where a rabbi, for example, he has a long beard, he's dressed like a penguin, black and white. Obviously, God forbid, I'm not making fun of that. I'm just saying the idea of black and white. That's how secular people sometimes look at it, from their perspective. And they see this guy and they say, wow, look at this religious person. They're scared of the rabbi. They're scared. And they have the payas and the beard and the black hat, whatever it is, right? And now the secular Jew is scared to talk to the rabbi. Sometimes the rabbi doesn't have the ability to do certain situations, right? To rebuke somebody, bring them on the path. But you might be this guy's cousin. You might be this guy's friend. You might be a religious person that this guy relates to. It doesn't matter. If sometimes the situation of rebuke is that you're the only one who could do the job. You're the only one who can rebuke him. And guess what? That'll be on your hand. That'll be your responsibility to rebuke that person. It might not be the rabbi's responsibility in that case. You might be the person. You might be the person who speaks the same language as this guy, who is able to talk to him, or able to connect to him, right? So the idea is what? We have to internalize this idea that each and every Jew, Kol Yisrael, Arevin, Zeh Lazeh, every Jew is responsible for each other. There's no, I do my thing, you do your thing, and Chazal Baruch, that's it. No, we're responsible for each other. We have to help each other out. We have to bring each other to the right path. If you see your brother or sister straying or not doing what he's supposed to do, straying off the path, it's your responsibility. And there's a good mashal, a parable, that gets this point across very well. The idea is what? That, for example, let's say you have a big boat. You have Carnival cruise ship, a ginormous ship, and you have hundreds of rooms in this ship, hundreds. And let's say one guy, he says, you know what? It's my room. I want to do whatever I want. And he starts drilling a hole in his room. Now everybody comes to him and like, what are you doing? The ship is sinking. You're taking all of us down. Imagine the guy says, what do I care? I'm not affecting you guys. I'm just drilling a hole in my room. It's not going to affect you guys. This is my room. You guys have your room. I have my room. But everyone's like, you fool. You make a hole in your room, you affect all of us. The same idea applies to Judaism. When one Jew sins, it's his problem. It's all of our problems. We're all connected. We're all one soul. We're all one neshama, as we say in Hebrew. We're all in this together. We all have an ultimate goal of, getting close to God, bringing the world close to God, bringing Mashiach, bringing the state of Tikkun, Olam Haba, bringing the utopian world of Mashiach, of the world of peace and the world of tranquility. We all have the collective mission. That's why every Jew, that's why the mitzvah of kiruv, the mitzvah of outreach is so significant. So the takeaway here for every single person listening, and I hope whoever's listening will actually do this and not just, listen to this class and just goes from one year out the other. But the idea is what? What's the takeaway? What can we take away from this? That every single one of us, again, there's no shortage of Jews who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, unfortunately. Like I said, 75% of Jews, I don't know if I said this before, but 75% of Jews are marrying non-Jews. 20% of Jews don't associate with any religion at all. They're basically, part of no religion. Millions of Jews converted to Christianity. 40% of non-Asian Buddhists in America are Jewish, right? There's basically let's put it this way. Most Jews, unfortunately, and this is a very sad thing to say, are not connected. They don't have a relationship with their Father in heaven. They don't have a relationship with God. Now it's our responsibility as people who do know the truth, whoever that may be, and really that falls on the people who do have a relationship with God, who will, as we call them, religious. I don't like the word religious because it has a kind of a Christian connotation, but let's put in the definition of religious means someone has a relationship with God, right? So let's say that's the definition I like to say for religion, right? So the people who do have a relationship with God, the religious people, as we like to call them, they have an obligation to reach out to their fellow brothers and sisters and bring them back. And again, this doesn't have to just be with a religious Jew to a secular Jew. This could even be, a Jew who sees another religious Jew not doing what he's supposed to be doing. There's so many examples of you see a Jew who's not following halacha, or he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's doing the wrong thing, and it's your obligation as a fellow Jew to help him out. Why? Because we're all in this together. We love each other. We're brothers and sisters. We love the Jewish people. We want the best for everybody. We want this guy, for example, if he knows the importance of Shabbat, his life will be so much better. We want him to feel that. It's not that we're doing that because we don't want to just get punished. We're doing this because we want to help our brothers and sisters. We want to bring them on the right path. And actually, a story I want to mention in the Gemara. There was a whole. Obviously, it's a parable. Obviously, this whole situation. So don't take it literally, but it's for us to learn the idea. There was a conversation around the destruction of the second temple. Conversation between Hashem and I think the Satan, right? Obviously, the Satan is just a robot. He's not any individual power. He's just a robot from God. And instead of God using this robot to do good in the world, he uses this robot to do bad. But obviously, God's ein on milvado. It's only God. God's controlling everything. But this is whatever. Just a story to get the point across. The idea is what? That the Satan went to Hashem and said, Hashem, we got to kill. It's time to destroy the second temple. I think it was the first or second temple. And the Satan started marking on the people's foreheads. Okay, who's gonna die? And God said, okay, please mark all the sinners, but don't mark the righteous people. Don't mark the righteous people. And the Satan said, what do you mean? We have to mark the head. The righteous should also die because they didn't stop the sinners. They had the ability to stop them, and they didn't. And God and God's like, what do you mean? We know that they didn't listen. We know that there's an idea in rebuke that if you know 100% someone won't listen, not, I know 98 or 97%. No, 100%. You know if you tell somebody something, like for example, shaving with a razor. You're not allowed to shave with a razor here. Okay, on this part. You can shave the back of your neck technically. The neck you shouldn't. Here for sure you shouldn't. So let's say you know someone's for sure shaving with a razor, right? If you go to that person and you know he's not going to listen to you, let's say it's a 90-year-old grandfather, okay? A grandpa, 90-year-old. And you know he's going to continue shaving, and you know whatever you say he's not going to listen. So you know what? And sometimes it's better not to say anything. Because at least if this guy goes up to heaven after 120 years, if you told him, you would have made him into a sinner who doesn't, let's say he doesn't know shaving is bad, or he doesn't know the significance of it. So basically, when he wouldn't be really held accountable for it. He would be held accountable for it, but at a different level. Meaning, he would be held accountable for the fact that he didn't get educated enough to know that's wrong. But let's say the sin, for example, it would be a different level of accountability, right? And if you tell him this, and now you're going to turn him into a purposeful sinner because now he knows what he's doing wrong, and he's not going to stop from it. So in that situation, it might be better to keep shut and not say anything. Obviously, in different situations, different scenarios, you have to have a rabbi or be knowledgeable enough when to do it and when not to do it. But the general idea is, that in that case, it wouldn't be a mitzvah to do it. So God said to the Satan, they knew that these people who were committing all these sins wouldn't listen. The righteous knew that the sinners wouldn't listen. So they shouldn't be held accountable. If you're only held accountable if you had the ability or there was a chance that you could help them, and then you tried. And then you didn't try, then you would be held accountable. But here they knew that for sure they're going to listen, so they were patur, as we like to say, or they were exempt from the mitzvah of rebuking that. And the Satan said, guess what? We knew, Hashem, you knew that they weren't going to sin. You knew that they weren't going to listen, but they didn't know. They didn't even try. They didn't even make an attempt. And God said, you're right, they should also die. So the idea is what? And obviously, it's a mashal, it's a parable. Don't think it's literally, right? Satan is not a separate entity. It's just the Torah, the oral Torah is trying to teach us a lesson here. Hashem is trying to teach us a lesson. And the lesson is what? That going on along with the things, everything I'm saying, not only do we have the obligation to rebuke, but we're responsible for every Jew. But even in a case where, let's say, you're not 100% sure if they're going to listen to you or not, right? If you know there's a good enough chance, and there's always a good enough chance. Most of the time, there is a good enough chance. You just have to do it in the right way. Again, like I said, with the compliment before, or use the straw man, or maybe sometimes the rebuke should be just, teaching the person, sitting down with the person and teaching him what the purpose of life is, teaching him how you know God exists, how you know the Torah is from God, whatever the rebuke may be. Or maybe that sometimes you can't do it. You have to get somebody else to do it. Maybe your friend is not going to listen to, but he's going to listen to like some type of mentor, some type of rabbi, or he's going to listen to his parents. Whatever the situation is, what? But unless you know 100%, which most people don't know 100%, some scenarios right? Like the grandpa example, 100% that he's not going to listen. But most of the time, we don't know. And that's why the obligation on us to rebuke falls upon us, and we should do the mitzvah. And again, not in a harsh manner, not in a judgmental manner, not in a manner we're going to put somebody down and make them hate Judaism, God forbid, but in a manner of, listen, I love you, bro. I want what's best for you. This is the right thing to do. So Bezrat Hashem, the takeaway for everybody listening is that if you see someone not doing what they're supposed to be doing, again, make sure it's constructive. Do the criticism, but make sure it's constructive. Do it in a nice way. Bring them on the right path. Show them you care about them. Maybe sometimes, I see somebody's doing something wrong. He's like, let's say, for example, someone's wearing their tefillin instead of wearing it above their hairline, which the halacha states that you have to do it above your hairline. But some people wear it very low. So a lot of times I go to the guy and I say, hey, your tefillin's a little bit too low. That's considered rebuke. And I tell him, maybe you make it a little bit high if you want to fulfill the mitzvah. And I do it in the nicest way. It's in a soft tone. I do it at the right time. Sometimes if there's other people there, you shouldn't say anything. Because guess what? When there's other people, next to that person, they're going to get defensive. They're going to be on defense mode. They're not going to, want to listen to you. They're going to start debating back with you. So catch them at the right time. Make sure they're by themselves. Give them a thing. But again, I told the guy, maybe put your tefillin up. Or for example, when they do the blessing of the Kohanim, right? A lot of people put their hands below their shoulders, right? Which is, if you do it like this below your shoulders, you're not fulfilling the obligation. It has to be above the shoulders when you're doing the Birkat Kohanim, right? It has to be above the shoulders, and it can't be above the head. It has to be from basically this area, from above the shoulders. So for example, today I had a guy who is not doing it right, and I told the guy in a nice way, hey, make sure when you do it, you put it above your shoulders. That's rebuke. That's a mitzvah also. So Bezrat Hashem, every single one of us, whether it's in a specific mitzvah, Shabbat, kosher, tefillin, or whether it's in the idea of kiruv, that you see a non-religious Jew and he has no relationship. Maybe he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Maybe the job should be to teach him, to learn with him, to explain him the importance. Whatever situation is, we have this mitzvah upon us. And Bezrat Hashem, always remember that the Jewish people are all one, and we're all in the same boat, and we're all in this together. No matter what the other person is doing, we have to, look at it as if we're also held responsible. Like I said, we get held accountable. It goes to our account if that person sins and he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. On the other hand, when he does a mitzvah, it goes to that person. It's in his merit also. So Bezrat Hashem, take this idea to heart. Thank you so much for listening.